Hey folks, Lenny Lawson here, the Car Guru. Welcome back. I'm answering questions that you didn't even know that you were supposed to ask, and going through a situation right now that I think is a learning experience maybe for you. So in 2005, I sold a short wheelbase Chevy Silverado truck, brand new. Matter of fact, I ordered it for this gentleman. And he is a very ultra-conservative guy, takes immaculate care of everything. You should see his yard. It is unbelievable. He's got about 3 acres. He's got a nice brick house sitting in the middle of it and not one bush or landscaping anywhere, just grass all the way up to the house. That's kind of the way they do it in Ireland. When I was in Ireland, they don't put any landscaping around the house. I guess they've got more sense than that. They understand what termites can do, and maybe they just. Matter of fact, a lot of the houses had concrete and asphalt right up to the house. So I don't know why I'm talking about that, but yeah, I sold this '85 Chevy Silverado, 2-wheel drive, short bed, pretty plain, automatic transmission, air conditioning, no power windows or anything. So fast forward to a couple months ago. I ended up buying that truck from him, and it had 8,000 miles on it. And as soon as I bought it, I said, you know what? That would make a great truck for my new driving grandson. So I put a bed cover on it just so he could, hide his stuff, his football gear and golf clubs and things like that, and be able to lock it up in the bed. And I was glad it was a regular cab because he can't haul a bunch of friends around. And he was tickled to death. And he loves that truck. I mean, he even named it. So the other day, he had a boo-boo. He was trying to cross a couple lanes of traffic. People were waving him through, trying to get to a turn lane. And he trusted the person waving him through. As soon as he gets in the other lane, he gets T-boned by a driver in a Hyundai. So it probably totaled the Hyundai, but it did about $6,000 worth of damage to this truck. Now, what's this truck worth? Well, if you look it up in the book, which there are multiple books, let's just call it the book, then it's worth anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000. But in reality, I, Lenny Lawson, a car dealer who knows these things, paid him $10,000 for the truck. Now, I think if I were to sell the truck, I could probably get 11, maybe 12. But, I didn't buy it to sell it. I bought it for my grandson. And so what's the insurance company wanting to do? Well, number one, I hope they don't cancel me. It's in my name and his name. And I did that for a specific reason. Quite frankly, my name shouldn't be on it at all because that does create liability for me. But I just decided to do it so that I could get insurance coverage through a company that insures my dealership and all my cars and my house and stuff like that. So I thought I could save money, and in fact, I did. But he wasn't listed as a driver on the vehicle. Does that mean that the accident is not covered? Well, with some insurance companies it would, but typically the insurance follows the vehicle. Now, if somebody looks at this real closely, they're not going to be happy that my 16-year-old grandson is really using this vehicle on a permanent basis. But we'll get to that when we get to that. So the insurance company is saying, well, this vehicle's totaled. Well, it's not. I can fix it for probably $4,000 to $6,000, somewhere in that neighborhood. But because of the book value, what it says in the book, they're saying it's totaled. So we're still working out this. This is a negotiation process. This is where you have to understand what your rights are. So let's say that they do total it, and I tell them I want to keep the salvage. Then they'll let me do that. They'll write me a check for what they think its market value is, and then I'll get to keep the vehicle. But they will take the title, and it will be branded. In other words, it will have salvage history. I don't want that, because really all that's wrong with this vehicle is it needs a new passenger side door, and it needs a new rocker panel, which is going to involve a little bit of work on the floor. It's going to have to be pulled. Actually, the bed of the truck has to be lifted off of it in order to be able to get to everything to fix this. But that's not a big deal. We take the beds off of trucks all the time to get to other components in the bed or underneath the bed, like to remove a gas tank or some other reason. So, I don't want a salvage title because there's no reason for it to be a salvage vehicle. I've got pictures of it. It's not that much damage. Like I say, it's just the door and the floor and the rocker panel. That's the panel that goes underneath the door. It connects from the back of the cab to the inner front fender, the lower portion of it. That's going to be cut out and replaced. And so my grandson, he loves this truck so much, he'll keep it forever. It's when I'm gone, he'll still have that truck because that will be his first vehicle, and he's very nostalgic about things like that. He may not drive it forever, I'm sure he won't. But that's his baby. And so he's distraught. His other grandparents, where he lives, said that he's been crying for 2 days. This kid my son was killed in a car accident in 2011, and this is his son. This kid has been raised by his 2 sets of grandparents, me and my wife, and the ones that live in northern Kentucky. His mom is around, and she's doing good. She lives in Knoxville and has 3 more kids, so he has 3 half-siblings. But he's been raised by his grandparents. And we've done everything we can possibly do to not spoil him, and that's why I'm thinking about whether or not to, as distraught as he is, should there be more of a penalty? Because it was his fault. I don't care if he was waved over. The person in the lane that he was trying to cross in front of waved him over. And I guess what they were saying, yeah, you can pass in front of me. I guess he thought, though, he said he thought that it was clear. I said, Cannon, you never trust a traffic cop sitting in another car, because that's not their role. You still have to look. And he didn't look, so he pulls right in front of oncoming traffic and gets slammed. So should I make him pay the deductible? It's $500. And, just a part of the lesson. He works all the time. He works at a detail shop and washing cars and stuff when he's not going to school and playing football and in football practice. He's a very responsible kid. So I'm struggling with that decision. But as parents, grandparents, whatever, there has to be a price for a mistake. And sometimes it's got to be more than some tears. Sometimes it has to hurt financially. And my main priority of course, my number one priority was that he's okay. And it was my greatest fear that as soon as he starts driving, he's going to be involved in an accident. You talk about a terrible place for somebody to learn how to drive is northern Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. There's not a main road up there that doesn't have 3 to 4 lanes on either side. And there's all this merging and crossing and all these different lanes that you have to pay attention to. It's confusing for me, and I'm a geezer. So I guess a couple points here. If you are dealing with an adjuster with an insurance company and you have a vehicle that they want to total, you do have rights, and sometimes you just have to look at the severity of the accident. If it had been a lot worse, if it had gotten to the cab and the bed, if the frame was bent, they can have it. But since it's just a door and some other minor repairs, then I want to keep it, and I don't want a branded title, and there's no reason to do that. So if that happens to you, feel free to call me, and I'll help coach you through it. The main thing, and I talk about this a lot on this show, is the importance of being nice and being straightforward and being honest. It just works. It works with jicky salespeople in a car dealership or with a service advisor that's, inattentive. It works with policemen. It works with adjusters. It just works in life to not lose your, what. Just cool it. Okay, I'll be back in just a minute. Ironically, I just got a call from a real good customer of ours who's bought, I don't know, from me, he's probably bought 10 F-150s through 450s. He's a regular. And so his wife is on Interstate 26. She's driving along. Everything's good. All of a sudden, she sees a ladder bouncing off the interstate right towards her. And thankfully, it did not go through her windshield. Didn't even crack the windshield, but it hit her grill, rolled up onto her hood, and then flew up over the top of the vehicle. So she's lucky. So he's calling me. He said, I need to bring it down to you and let your body shop fix it. I said, well, I'm sorry that it happened, and I can recommend some good body shops. What, you don't have a body shop? No, I do not have a body shop. I tried that for, let's see, well, we had some relative success in the body business before it became a game where you had to, I hate to even say this, where you had to bribe people, insurance adjusters, to get them to send you business. And it happens. And so when it got to that point, and that's something that I've refused to do. I'm not going to buy business. I'm going to do it the honest way. I'm going to write an estimate, and I'm going to be competitive, and we're going to do quality work and leave it at that. But that wasn't enough, and so we decided to, well, we didn't really sell everything. I still have the building. I still have 3 paint booths. I have all the frame machines and stuff. I just rent it out to another guy who's running a body shop, so it works pretty well. But I'm not able to take care of my customer. So we started talking about where he needs to take it. And so the relationship between the customer and a body shop and an insurance adjuster, an insurance company, is kind of interesting because, the body shop really has 2 customers in that regard. You, the car owner, and the insurance company who's paying for it. And so he has to satisfy both parties. And the body shop business has really changed. If you have a car and you wrecked it and you take it to a body shop, let's say it's 1 year old, would you expect that they would put used parts on your vehicle to fix it? Of course not. But what if it's 2 years old? No, I don't want used parts on my vehicle. Well, guess what? After a certain period of time, and it's 2 years with a lot of insurance companies, your insurance policy says that they can use LKQ parts. What's that stand for? Like, kind, and quality. So if there's a good used door out there somewhere and you have a vehicle that's over 2 years old and it's cheaper than a new door, then the insurance company has the right to acquire that used door on your behalf, and they'll do it through the body shop and have that redone. What if it's the wrong color? Doesn't matter. They'll make them paint it. So is that something that you really want? I don't think so. Not me. I mean, if my car is 8, 10 years old, yeah, I don't care. Used parts. My vehicle is quite used at that point. And so a used part really doesn't bother me. Another aspect of like, kind, and quality are aftermarket parts. They're actually, the Chinese seem like they make everything, right? I mean, you can't think of just about any type of product that is not replicated in China. When you go to O'Reilly Auto Parts, or you go to, just about any auto parts store, Napa, you name it, most of those parts come from China. Now, let's say when your F-150 was built, it was built in Dearborn, Michigan. And when it was going through the plant, they have you ever seen an assembly plant, or maybe been to one, or actually watched how cars are built? It is pretty fascinating. But one of the processes, when they get all the body panels together, it goes through this dip. It's called an ELPO dip primer. And it goes underwater, basically, into the primer. It takes a bath. It stays there, and they're basically the body is charged positively or negatively, and the primer itself has the opposite charge, so they attract one another. And it's you have a whole lot better rust preventative that way. Well, when a part is made in China, they probably don't do that. It's not that extensive. It's not like your car was built. That's why I'd rather have OEM parts, original equipment manufactured parts, including body parts, when I do repairs on my vehicles. But the insurance company has the right to use aftermarket China-made fenders, doors, tailgates, whatever. And they just, in many cases, they just don't fit very well. They just don't bolt up exactly like the factory parts do. And body shops really don't like that. They don't like to have to use aftermarket parts, but they do. You know why? Because that other customer of theirs is demanding it. The one who has the checkbook. And that's not you. Plus, they want to stay on the program, which means that, there's a lot of, like Farm Bureau is really big around here, State Farm is as well. They have these programs called pro shops, and you want to be on their list. You want to be a pro shop. If you're not a pro shop, then, a customer can wreck a vehicle and still bring it to you and have it fixed, but you're not one of the listed providers. So what's going to happen is you wreck your car, and they're going to say, well, these are our pro shops, and we would prefer that you go directly to them. Well, what if your buddy owns a shop and he's not on that list? Well, you can still go have your buddy fix the car, but they've got to fix it in exactly the same way that a pro shop would. So the insurance companies have a certain degree of leverage over these pro shops, the ones that are approved by Farm Bureau, State Farm, so forth. And they have to do whatever State Farm and Farm Bureau tells them to do in terms of what type of parts to use on the vehicle. And, as far as the estimate, they have to make sure that it falls in the guidelines for the company. And it may take 10 more hours of labor to really fix your car right than the insurance company's willing to pay. But guess what? That body shop is going to take the shortcuts to satisfy the paying customer, the insurance company, not you. So that's why you need to really scrutinize the estimate. I think you ought to get an estimate from a pro shop, one of their shops, and then an independent shop, and just compare them and just see what the difference is. If the pro shop estimate is a couple $1,000s less than the independent shop, I want to know why. And you have the right to ask because, you are a customer. They want to make sure you're satisfied because you may cancel your insurance and go someplace else. But the only way you're going to know a lot of this is to read your policy. I want to know if I go buy car insurance, okay, what happens when I have a wreck? What am I going to have to go through? What kind of a time frame? What kind of rental car coverage do I have? Oh, you don't have rental car coverage. Well, that's great. How much extra is rental car coverage? It's this much extra. Okay, add that in. I want that. And, at what point do I have to start using LKQ parts? And they're going to look at you and say, how do you know about that? I listen to this podcast, radio show. Never mind. That will be our secret. I'll be back in just 1 minute. So I'll let you know what happens with my grandson's vehicle and how that turns out. The same thing applies. Let's say you have an antique car and you wreck it. And you've got it insured through a regular insurance company, which would be a big mistake if you did. Because if you have a vintage car, is it insured? Is that car in your garage, that 62 Chevy Impala SS, does it have any insurance on it? Or did your wife make you cancel it because it was too expensive and you weren't willing to give up the car? That'd be pretty sad. If your house burnt down, well, your homeowner's insurance may cover it, but I'm not sure. What if you decide to take it out for a spin and you have an accident? If you have your insurance through the wrong company, they may value that car totally differently than you do. That's why, you need to get your insurance on vintage cars through companies that specialize in vintage cars, like Haggerty is one of them. And there's American Collectors Insurance, Grundy Insurance, Heacock Classic Car Insurance. There's a bunch of them. You can just Google it, but I wouldn't go through State Farm or Farm Bureau or something like that unless they have some kind of special program for vintage cars. And the other side of that is values. I mean, if you own, well, let's say you've owned a Mustang forever. It's a fastback Mustang, C code, 4-speed in the floor, nice car. It's probably gone up $50,000 in value since you bought it. Do you have it covered for enough? Because a lot of those go by stated coverage. You state an amount that you want to cover it, and others actually float with inflation. What does your policy say? If you don't know, you better find out. But that applies to everybody. If you've got car insurance, you need to know what happens when you have a claim. But most people, they don't do that. They call their insurance agent. They say, I need insurance on this. What do you want your deductible to be? And you tell them. And then that's all that they know about their car insurance, what their deductible is. They don't know what the limits of liability are. They do not know what their comprehensive coverage is. I mean, if you own a business or have a lot of assets, in other words, you are a suable individual, if something happens, somebody can get a pretty good chunk of your estate if you do not have enough liability coverage. Maybe you need balloon coverage, which I have. I won't say how much, but I've got a ton just in case something really happens here at the dealership that they decide to not only come after my corporation, but they decide to come after me personally. And you probably need to look at it for your home as well, in case somebody trips and breaks a leg or something in your property. You never know what somebody will sue you for these days. Well, thanks for listening to this edition of My Car Guru. I hope I haven't scared you, but it is important to know this stuff. A lot of people don't think about it. If you have any questions, call me 423-552-2020. It's better to send a text. That works. Or email me at LennyLawson2020 @gmail.com. And I'll see you on the next edition of My Car Guru.